the top of the hour here, so let's get going. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you may be. We appreciate you holding, and welcome to today's Cloud Services Community Webinar. Our topic for today is a deep dive into evolving business models in the cloud. All phone lines are in a listen-only mode, and later there will be a question and answer session with instructions being given at that time. You may also ask a question at any time using the chat window located in the control panel. Chat questions will be answered at the end of the presentation with the rest of the Q&A portion. Today's session is being recorded, and we will be sending out a copy of today's materials, which include the PowerPoint deck and a recording of the webinar following the call. Now I'd like to introduce our expert speaker for today. As Director of Indirect Channel Management at Comcast Business, Matt Wilson brings over 15 years of experience to the telecom industry. He is a founding member of the Comcast Solutions Provider Program and was instrumental in the launch and development of the Indirect Channel Program. Matt, go ahead and take it away.
Great, thanks, Sam. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited for the opportunity to speak to you guys about what is going on in the cloud and kind of our general view of it. So for today's program, I'm going to give a brief overview of Comcast, and then I'll talk about some of the strategic trends that we see going on and that are impacting our partners, and we have conversations about them regularly. And then we'll talk about, how to make money doing this, and then kind of end with some of the product portfolio things that we have, and we'll conclude the program with some question and answers from the audience. So just briefly, if you start to look at Comcast Business, we've been around since 2006. We're the largest cable provider. We're currently operating in 39 states, so really a domestic focus. We have over 1 million business services customers, and we're on a run rate this year to do over $4 billion. So it's a pretty fast-growing company. And then if you look at our product and our product portfolio, it's really kind of the plumbing, and we kind of call it the plumbing to the cloud or the internet. And we have basic voice and data solutions that provide that connectivity. And really, we own fast. For 3 years running, we have the fastest internet service out there. And so, when you look at what we provide, we're really the path to the cloud, or the connectivity to the cloud. And briefly, if you look at our networks, a lot of people don't know this, but we own our network end-to-end. We are the largest last-mile alternative to the traditional phone network that's out there. We have over 600,000 miles of plant that's out there, over 140,000 miles of fiber. And one thing that's different about our model, when we deploy service, we actually pull a circuit and deploy it all the way into the business suite. We don't use anybody for the last mile. We actually own and manage that. And when you start to look at how that impacts the cloud, we think that's important because we can provide an end-to-end solution from the business premise all the way to the cloud for what partners and end users are looking for. But really what I want to talk about today is the cloud, and it really is the critical path to growth. And I've borrowed this from some of our partners from Ciena, Cisco, and Juniper, and these are some stats that they've recently been talking about. And you can see huge growth in the cloud and IP global traffic and data centers growing really big. The one I want to focus on is the 1.6 zettabytes of IP traffic and how it's growing. And so I'm a product and sales guy by training, but if I start to think about, what's a zettabyte of traffic? Well, if you tell me a gigabyte, I think I can generally try to understand that, or a megabyte, or if I think of a terabyte, I'm still with you. But as I get to, a petabyte, a petabyte, and a zettabyte, and get way down there, I'm like, well, what is that? Well, a zettabyte's, 16 zeros, or sorry, 20 zeros. It's huge. And it would be the same as, if every person on Earth tweeted for 100 years, or you watch your favorite show for 125 million years. I mean, it's an enormous amount of IP traffic that's being generated, and it's going to continue to grow. And I think what that means for everybody in the partner community building complex business solutions, that there's huge growth in front of us. And selfishly, from a Comcast Business Services perspective, I would say the connectivity is the most important piece of that. So if you start to look at, we get this question all the time from our partners, how do you define the cloud? What is the cloud? What are the pieces of the cloud? And we try to break it up really into 3 different pieces. Really, we look at connectivity. And yes, I can have all these devices and I can have all these applications, but if they're not connected, I start to lose the power of what they are. So connectivity is a huge piece. and how I connect to those different things. Big data is this next piece. And so there's huge amounts of data being generated from various different devices that are now connected to the network, anything from Fitbits and monitoring your different things at your business. There's just huge amounts of data that are being captured, and now you start to look at the business applications that are out there that start to crunch that data. And so the analogy I can use here is if you have Microsoft Excel and I open it up, it doesn't really do anything, but if I load in a bunch of numbers, I can start to analyze things and develop trends and understand what's going on in my business. Then I need to be able to connect that and push it out to my regional sales office and my teleworkers, and I need to move that data around. So when we kind of talk to our partners about the cloud, these are really the three components that we start to see out there. And partners definitely play a role in each one of these pieces. And so from our view, it's an ecosystem, right? End users are looking for complex business solutions. The folks that are buying complex business solutions, that business decision maker is changing. It's moving out of the IT kind of CIO realm and more into the line of business decision maker. And so that person is wanting a complete solution, and if you start to look at what goes into that solution, there's really these three pieces, and they all go together. If I take one of them out, yeah, I might be connected to the network and I might have an application, but if I don't have any of my information or my big data in it, I'm not sure how more efficient I can run my business. And if I lose my connectivity to my business apps and my big data, I'm going to have a big problem in running my business. So they're all really interrelated. And what we're coaching our partners to say is you need to take a view of being able to understand each one of these pieces. So traditionally, we work all the time with telecom agents who understand connectivity. It's what they do all the time. We're coaching them to understand how cloud apps and business apps and how big data play a role in what they're doing today, and vice versa. We spend a lot of time talking with traditional IT VARs who understand big data, applications, hardware, those types of things, and don't understand connectivity. And all these, each partner is having their business impacted either by connectivity and having to understand that, or by I need to figure out cloud and the apps that go with it. So if you continue down the theme of strategic trends that we see going on in the cloud, there are really 5 things. It's kind of this web IT, hybrid clouds, mobile apps, and software-defined anything. In our case, it's really networks. And then I actually was having a conversation with my boss this morning about the Internet of Things and all these devices that are being connected to the network. So if I start to look at web IT, it's really this concept of delivering IT services over the cloud. So any managed service, instead of buying hardware and software such as Microsoft buying Microsoft 360 instead of loading it on everybody's PCs. We see our partners are now really trying to understand how they can play a part in how different technology solutions are delivered via the cloud and how they can make money doing those things. The next way is this concept of really a hybrid cloud. And we kind of say in the camp of, yeah, there's always going to be some equipment and some software on the premise, and there's most likely going to be some hardware and some software in the cloud, aka some sort of a data center or some off-site location. And where our partners are really working today is understanding, okay, what is on-site, what's going to be moved off-site, how do I manage that process, how do I connect it, how do I put the right apps in place, what's going to stay on-premise, and how am I going to manage those things. And so they're really having to understand those two scenarios. And you start to look at the cloud, it doesn't really stand by itself. There is going to be this hybrid piece of what's on-premise, what's at a remote regional office, how does it connect back to the various data centers that clients are demanding. The next thing, this kind of goes without saying, is mobile apps and applications. And this is something that we see going on in our partner community all the time. And from our view, we're in the process of rolling out a new cloud app with our new partner portal. And it's kind of interesting, when we made the decision to roll out our partner portal, it was done within the channel. IT didn't come to us and say, here's what we're going to build for you, right? And the person making that buying decision was actually the SVP of sales, not anybody in IT. And that's because rolling out the cloud app, we knew we could build an experience and make it easier to do business with us by having this kind of distributed cloud app. And so, just from our own experience, we're doing it, and when we talk to partners every day at different events and forums like this, they're giving us feedback. They're figuring out how to deploy these apps and how to monetize the apps with network services. The next thing is this concept of a software-defined anything. And in our scenario, what we start to see and what we see coming down the pipe is software-defined networks. And that's going to become more important as you connect to the cloud. And when we talk with our partners and their end users, they might be buying a 100 megabit Ethernet circuit today. They fully anticipate that to grow to 500 megabits over the next 6 to 8 months and up to a gig. And luckily, with the network that we provide, we have the ability to scale rapidly with them without ripping and replacing circuits or equipment, and being able to minimize the impact on their business by increasing their bandwidth to meet their business needs. And so essentially, when we provision circuits or turn up circuits, we provide a ton of bandwidth, and we can change the amount of bandwidth that the end user can consume via a software configuration, and not actually having to physically change or re-provision anything. So we definitely see this every day, and I think it's going to become a bigger trend. I think you start to look at something like Amazon Web Services, where it's really software in the cloud, and it's defined by the software and the end user. I can turn up things as I need. Nothing's provisioned specifically dedicated to that customer. So we definitely see that trend continuing. And then the concept definitely of the Internet of Things. You start to look at some of the research that's out there. 26 billion units installed by 2020, and hundreds of billions of dollars in services. And we think this is great news for partners that are in the managed service space and trying to understand how they can manage more services, that the Internet of Things is going to become a huge part of that. And I start to look at myself and all the different devices I have, from 2 different cell phones, one for business, one for personal use. I think we have 3 different iPads that our family uses, 2 different laptops, one's a Chromebook, we have a desktop computer. So we have 7 or 8 devices in my family alone that's connected to the Internet, spitting out bits and bytes. And I just see that trend continuing. And how that impacts the cloud is, how is all going to be connected? And then once it's connected, what applications am I going to use to manage all the kind of bits and bytes that are getting kicked out onto the network by all these different types of devices? So we definitely see this starting to happen. And so the question starts to become, why is this changing? What is driving this? And I kind of touched on it earlier, but the cloud provides technology options that are so easy to access, and business customers can gain access to them in ways they've never have been able to. The example I can use from our industry is, 5 to 10 years ago, buying a premise-based phone system with all the bells and whistles and features that really got folks excited may cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, today that same solution with even more features and functionality can be bought on a hosted service, in a cloud-based type of scenario for, a small fraction of that a month. It might be $40 or $50 a month. I can buy that type of hosted phone service and have all the bells and whistles that might have cost, a couple $100,000 10 years ago. And so what that means is I might run a small, 8-person marketing firm or real estate agency. Previously, because of the technology changes, I would not have been able to buy that type of service and have Find Me, Follow Me, in a remote office and all these cool features. But now, small business can have access to these types of services that were never available before. And as I touched on a little bit before, but the buying expectations are definitely changing. And this coincides with the line of business decision people making the choices that they are today. And I kind of look at how our organization works. When we buy things, we don't go buy a certain piece from one vendor and another piece from someone else. We have a partner come in, if we're buying software or whatever we're buying, and sell us everything that we need to build the solution. And so this is definitely a change from when the CIO would manage things or an IT guy would manage things, and I want to buy hardware from one guy, software somewhere else, network from somebody else, and I could deal with 3 or 4 different vendors to build a technology solution. What we're seeing and the feedback we're getting from our partners is that is absolutely changing, and that these partners are having to understand the various components that before they might have had a peer relationship help them out with, and it's really changing. One of the best examples I can give of this is we had a partner in Chicago that started working with us. He was really this kind of born in the cloud type partner. And in 2012, he made exactly $0 of sales for us. But in 2013, he became one of our top partners. And that happened because he had a healthcare client that he was working with. And when he started selling into the account years ago, he initially sold hardware. And they started to trust him, like, okay, your hardware solution works great. Then he started selling them software. That relationship moved into a managed services type of engagement. And over time, the CIO and the line of business decision people at the healthcare firm said, you're a great technology partner for us. We have this network issue, and we're going to change out how we've been doing things for the last 5 or 6 years, and we're looking to make a change. We want to change out this traditional solution. Can you offer us something? Well, this guy didn't raise his hand and say, oh, I want to be a telecom agent. I want to sell networking services. His key customer was asking him, hey, I have a problem here. Can you solve it? And he said, absolutely. So he did the research and in Chicago realized we were one of the key players and realized we were the right fit for how they wanted to manage their business. And by doing that, he took the training and got certified and did everything that he needed to do to become a partner and sold a solution. And in 2012, he had $0 worth of sales with us, and in 2013, he was one of our top partners. And it was because he wanted to build this complex business solution, and he really wasn't looking to make money off networking and telecom services. He knew if he solved the problem for his business and did it correctly, that he would make money in the process. And so we're seeing more and more partners start to try to figure that out of, I can't just be a one-trick pony and offer hardware or software or just sell networking services. I need to understand how I sell networking services and how that then relates to the cloud and how that works. Another story I can tell you about that is we get a lot of IT partners come to us because they might sell the cloud and big data, and then they're like, yeah, go talk to your telecom guy. He'll get the circuit. Well, when there's an issue with a cloud app, who do they call? They call the cloud vendor and the guy that sold them the hardware and software that's making that cloud solution happen. They don't call the person who sold the network. And so we hear frequently why people are starting to work with us is because they want to be able to control that and understand that. Because when the CEO has an issue with the cloud or an app or something like that, he's going to call the vendor who sold them and say, your cloud app isn't working. And he can look at all his management software and see, no, the cloud app's working great. Oh, it's the network. And if you don't control the network, you can't impact or influence that piece of the equation. So we see definitely all of these things driving these changes. And it's tough. And we hear this feedback from our partners that there's kind of two things going on right now. One is this transformation to the cloud, and that's really a technology-based change where you have to understand how hardware and software work, and are impacted by networks and how all those things go together. It's also a business change and understanding how the cloud works, because most of it's done on a recurring revenue type model or a brokerage/agency model. It's different than reselling. You're not taking title and transferring it, to the end user when you sell the cloud. There's not a physical product, right? It's at the data center. It's a virtual server. It's things like that. And so how that with the technology create, a big challenge for partners, and that's what we see. And so that kind of brings us to the part of the program of, well, how do you make money doing this? Where is the money, and what are some concepts and ideas? And so what we start to see is, partners who are really being successful this year really are offering different products and services that are driving that value to a client through solving a complex business solution. And they're starting to understand, partners are starting to understand, hey, I can leverage recurring revenue by selling certain services. I can make one-time fees by selling other services. How do I blend all that together so I balance, what's right for my business and my specific business model, so I have enough cash coming in from one-time sales and one-time payments versus beginning to build an annuity stream over time, similar to an insurance model or a financial services type model. And the partners who are being successful are really embracing this, and they're figuring out, I can't ignore this anymore. I know I have to understand this, and we have partners within our community kind of raising their hand, asking for help. Who should I talk to? What application should I consider? So all these things are definitely starting to happen now. And so when it comes down to it, partners always want to know, because they definitely coin operate at the end of the day, even if they want to say that I'm not about that and I'm really about finding the best solution. Yeah, this is always a component. How can I make money, and what are the pieces of it? And so if you go back to my initial analogy of, okay, there's connectivity, big data, business apps. From our view, we sell. Our partners sell networking services, and in that scenario, they're not reselling that. They're acting as a broker or an agent. And really, they're acting on our behalf. And when they sign that contract, or that customer up to a contract, it's a Comcast Business contract, and we're doing billing, and we're doing installs, and we're taking care of, bad debt and all those things. And partners receive a recurring commission for that. Well, on the other side of the equation, we look at big data and business apps. This is where partners add value. Specifically within the Comcast business model, we don't sell cloud apps. We don't sell hardware. We don't do a lot of these things. So if you look how these two go together, we're really a complementary competency to what partners do. And some other service providers sell all of these things. So the message starts to get a little mixed and a little model of, well, if a partner introduces a deal, are you going to sell them, cloud services ABC or virtualization A, B, and C, and that hardware, because you do all those things. Well, from our view, we don't do those things, so it's a really great fit how we work with partners. And so when you look at where are partners selling, what are they doing in the cloud? It's a lot of backup, a ton of disaster recovery, and that kind of leads to this concept of a parallel production network. As you move to the cloud, having, circuit A and circuit B, and A is my primary, and if it goes down, B can pick up a little bit of the load, but not all of it. Those days are starting to go away, because what we're seeing from partners and end users is, I need two connections. Both connections have to be able to handle the entire load of our applications and our processing that's in the cloud. I can't have part of my apps. I can't have part of my data. Right? If circuit A goes down, circuit B has to be able to pick up the entire load. And so the end users, using Salesforce.com, using a cloud accounting package, running programs like that, they can't have it kind of work part of the time and really be impaired. And so this idea of kind of a primary network and a backup network really start to go away, and it's this concept of a parallel production network. I've got two circuits, both are in use. If one goes down, the other circuit can pick up the entire load, and the end users interfacing on an Office 360 or Salesforce.com don't even know that there's an issue. And then the third kind of component is this idea of connecting public and private clouds. And as I mentioned, earlier, some analysts want to, proclaim that everything is going to the cloud. Well, yeah, a lot's going to go to the cloud, but there still will be, some things at off-site locations where there's still private servers that are used specifically for a specific business need and aren't a shared pool of resources. And so end users and partners are trying to figure out, hey, I have these private clouds and these private things that I need to build, but I need to connect it to the public network, and I need to be able to move data as I choose between my public cloud and my private cloud based on my business requirements. And then that kind of comes to partners, where we see partners are solving business problems with their traditional solutions, right? They're selling hardware and software. They're doing consulting. We probably see more partners doing more professional services, consulting, and managed services in our space than they have, probably ever. And that's because the end users are demanding it, and to stay in business and to respond to the trends in the market, our partners are making that adjustment. And again, this is it could be recurring revenue, it can be a one-time type of revenue. It's really a value-added service based on a particular sales engagement and what's going on or occurring. And this is why we think we're a great fit for partners, because we let partners handle that. Partners bring all of this value to the table. We generally don't, from a Comcast Business perspective, do these things. We provide the plumbing that enables these types of voice and data services to occur. And so, one question that comes up is, what does this look like? How does recurring revenue work? So, we like to show this slide. So, if you sell $1,000 worth of recurring revenue services for every single month, what does that start to look like? Well, how much money is that going to be? Do you think it's $12,000? Well, if you say $12,000, that's not right. And so, and now you can start to see the power of recurring revenue. So if I sell $1,000 in every month of the year, at the end of the month, or at the end of the year, I'll have $78,000 in billed revenue. And so we like to include this slide when we talk about how do I make money, including the networking services piece, because the majority of our partners sell that as a recurring revenue service. You start to see the power, right, of what it can mean to your business, and over time, I like to equate it to stacking sheets, right, sheets of paper. In month 1, I got 1 sheet of paper. Month 2, right, I have a couple more, and over time, I'm going to stack sheets of paper every single month, and in a couple of years, I'm going to have a really big stack of paper that's generating a pretty significant annuity stream that really starts to matter to my business. And so then if you start to look at the portfolios that we have and to kind of plant some seeds of where we fit in the equation, right, we spend a lot of time with our partner community saying, hey, we're not Larry the Cable Guy, right? This is business services. It's a separate network. We have business voice solutions, ranging from hosted solutions and PRIs and things like that. And on the data side, we have small business solutions all the way up to carrier class Ethernet solutions with QoS and symmetrical service. We've recently rolled that out on our coax network, so you can use 600,000 miles of our coax that has SLAs, that has QoS on our Ethernet product. You can mix and match those coax services with our fiber. So there's been a lot of changes to that go on from a Comcast Business perspective. And additionally, you look at our video solutions. That was one thing when we launched Channel 3.5 years ago. Sitting around working on the business case, we didn't really know how much television will these guys sell. We've been pleasantly surprised. We saw a ton of TV, and that's kind of what goes with this always-on environment. The CEO wants CNN in his office and put something in the waiting room. So we kind of have these 3 different solutions that we see partners kind of mix and match when they start to build cloud solutions. And so in summary, the cloud is here. It's absolutely here. We hear partners talking about it at every event that we're at. We were hosting events, webinars or face-to-face type events. They're asking questions about the cloud. They're trying to figure it out, and they understand that's driving a huge change, and it's impacting their business model, and it's impacting the technology that they sell. What we see from the partner communities, they're really, really trying to dig in and figure out what their specific model is going to look like. And there's a couple different ways to go, as you saw from recurring revenue, mixing and matching one-time fees. And partners recognize they have to take a different approach to the market. Just being able to walk away from a piece of the sale that, yeah, I'll sell the routers and somebody else can put the software and whoever hooks up the network, great. That they have to adjust to those demands in the marketplace that we see out there. And then we would counsel you, if you're doing, you're used to a traditional reselling model, there are some subtle nuances of recurring revenue that you have to understand, right? You're not taking title and transferring the title, and you're not holding inventory of all these things, and you're not doing the billing, and you don't have to handle the provisioning. And while you would be involved in the project management of the turn-up of the service, there's carriers, like Comcast Business, we have sales engineers that assist partners. We have networking engineering resources. So it's a different model when you start to consider what goes into it, right? And we handle billing and customer care and bad debt and all those things that traditionally might be done. You don't have to take those things on. And I'd submit to you in selling telecom services with the complexity of the regulations and taxing and all these different things that most partners don't want to get involved with. That you want to act as an agent and partner with carriers to do those things and build recurring revenue streams. So I usually try to keep these to 30 to 35 minutes. I brought that in right at about 32 minutes. So that's kind of our view of the cloud. And I think with that, Sam, we want to open it up for some questions that might be out there.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a bunch, Matt.
Sure.
If anyone would like to ask a question, we have several different ways you can do it. You can ask by raising your hand using the Raise Hand button located in the GoToWebinar control panel. If at any time your question has been answered, please lower your hand to remove yourself from the queue. Or if you prefer, you can ask a question via the chat box. and also using the chat window or question window located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. I already got a few coming in, it looks like.
Great. What do you got?
All right. Does your new web tools allow a user to monitor bandwidth consumption in real time and then make an informed decision to increase bandwidth, and will this be able to become a real-time process as they add new apps?
Yeah, so today it's more of a manual process, but one thing that's being developed now is kind of that view into the customer slash partner portal, where you can see how much bandwidth are they consuming, and what needs to be adjusted. So what we obviously, from a Comcast perspective, monitor that and understand how much they're using, and when they start to bump up against thresholds, we would reach out to them and say, hey, you're starting to hit your threshold, you should probably upgrade. What's cool about our process, specifically when you sell our Metro or Ethernet type services, our solution scales from 10 megabits up to 10 gigs, and that's without ripping and replacing the hardware or rolling a truck and things like that. And so back to kind of this software-defined network, we can make those changes pretty rapidly because it's just a billing paper type change. It's not a deploy a technician, change the box out, impact the end user's business, take them out of service, all that stuff. We can scale that bandwidth up pretty rapidly between those types of services. But yeah, it's definitely something that's being developed, kind of that near real-time view into bandwidth, and here's peaks and valleys and reporting that's going on. So that's something that's coming. Good question.
All right, another one came through. How is Comcast Business different from residential? You said it's a different network. Do you mean that logically or physically? Do not the packets still compete regardless of logically separated networks?
It's actually both. So when it first started, yeah, we shared the residential network, but now it's so big, and like I mentioned, we have 1 million customers. When you look at how business services is deployed, and again, our Ethernet network's 3 years old now; it's brand new. So the cable network is made up of very different service nodes, and so when you look at the different service nodes, we keep residential traffic and business traffic separate. Sure, once it hits our huge backbone, we have one of the largest backbones in the world. Yeah, all the packets are mixed on the backbone, but the congestion wouldn't happen on the backbone because there's so much bandwidth. So, but we're actually, we separate those. We have different service nodes, and we split those nodes when capacity hits a certain level, and how we mix business services and then residential services, because they're different in nature. And you start to look at our business services again, on our Ethernet. It's a pretty big change for cable, where we have QoS, there's SLAs, it's symmetrical. And so when we deployed that, we obviously had to do it in a different manner and method, because it's not the same as a residential cable service. And so this concept of, when Junior comes home from school and hits iTunes or starts playing a game, he's going to impact business services. No, that's not the case anymore. That's not how it works.
Awesome. Okay, another one's floating in. Now, what is the best way to get started in selling network services?
That's a great question. That's one that comes up all the time. And what we start to see is that there's some different models. And when you work with one of our contracted partners, they have different compensation models of being able to pay you one time for a sale and get involved, or actually becoming an agent and getting a signed contract and taking on some things for doing that. But there are various different partners that you would work through. That if you look at our master agents that are contracted directly with us, they all have onboarding programs. They have local channel managers that are in a lot of markets around the country and can do a lot of hand-holding, and they would assist you with quotes. So I know this question comes up a lot. Some partners have concerns and fears of, if I do this, how am I going to figure it out, and is there training available? And the answer is yes. We have various different resources to onboard partners, as do our master agents. They have different training programs. There's resources to assist with quoting and checking service availability. So it's not a scenario where you raise your hand and sign up, and then you're left on your own accord to try to figure out how to work with cable and what to do. That's probably something I've seen probably change the most over the 3 years that we have been having a channel program, and it's the resources that we enable to make sure partners can easily quote, and place an order for the service.
Okay. This one kind of piggybacks along with that question. And what type of resources are needed to sell network services?
Yeah, so that's another question that comes up. What we start to see is the partners who are most successful, and so in this scenario, typically if they normally sell traditional IT hardware type services, the partners who are the most successful have a dedicated person. And so we would say, all right, if you're going to be really serious about it and just not do onesie-twosie, but actually make it part of your business, you have to have dedicated resources. And so having a salesperson or have somebody that kind of owns networking services, and then it's not a hobby, it's kind of their day job, and they're really focused on it. Our most successful kind of traditional IT partners, what they do is they might have a traditional network or a hardware and software group that sell those things, and when they make that sale, if in that process they train them to say, hey, ask about network services and see what gauge where they are on that, and if it's an appropriate fit, they'll send that lead over to the network services group and generate leads internally from their own sales that are going on. The other thing we see is in that type of model where I have a dedicated networking services, a lot of these IT VARs have been in business for a long time and have large embedded bases. You can go back to those same customers and say, hey, now I'm offering these types of services. I can do more. I can solve these complex business solutions. And so, yeah, you can absolutely sell networking services, with your existing sales staff and master agents, again, that we work with have resources to assist you with that. And they have kind of responded to the model because they know not every traditional IT partner wants to get involved and wants to take everything on, and they have kind of their own internal referral programs where you get paid a little less, but just refer it in, and someone within the master agency will, help do the quote and price and all that stuff. Versus being an agent where I want to take on more, I want to understand the quoting process and get the signed paperwork. So there are kind of a couple different models, and I would counsel you to look at your business model, and you just kind of want to dip your toe in this type of scenario. I would say we'll work with the master agent and find out the different programs they have, so you can just kind of refer business in, and if you start to pick up some steam, you can always change it over to act more like a normal agent would and do more of that order processing and get paid more for it. So there's a lot of different resources internally with master agencies, and we have 20 different channel field sales managers and account management team that can help out.
Excellent. This is a question from a partner aspect. Do partners just hand you a lead to close, or are they involved in every step?
And again, kind of back to the last answer, in general, the partners have their own leads, right? They're out in their sales market and their geo, making, doing those types of sales calls, and when they find a networking services opportunity, they would bring in, Comcast Business to help assist in that process. And so, it's not a type of scenario where you just sign up to be a partner and leads start coming out from the service provider. Typically, on this side of the equation, it doesn't generally work that way most of the time. Lead generation, kind of all those sales opportunities the partners are finding, and they're kind of raising their hand saying either I have this existing embedded base and I want to sell networking services into it, or hey, I'm being asked about it, what do I do?
Okay. I think this question also kind of stems from that in terms of handling the rules of engagement, with partners. How do you guys handle those? And since in a way they'll be competing kind of with your direct sales team.
Yeah, that's a great question. That comes up, all the time in these types of meetings and forums. So we have a pretty clear-cut rules, rule of engagement. The amount of channel conflict we have is so small. And it's fractions of the single percent based on the amount of orders that we do a month. And frankly, we kind of wish it would be more, so we knew that our partners were out, kind of stirring up more sales opportunities. But at the end of the day, we don't really have that much channel conflict. But we have clear-cut rules of engagement, and it's really an ink wins type policy. And so if the scenario, if I go out, if I'm the partner and I sell to Bobby's Golf Shop, and I sign the contract on July 1st and get that ink, and it starts the process. If somebody, after the fact tries to come in and submit a duplicate contract, on that and say that somebody submits a duplicate contract for that opportunity on July 8th, we have processes that basically stop that duplicate order and make sure that the partner doesn't have any issues with that. And so it's really an ink type of wins policy when the contract gets signed, and vice versa. We see some partners that will try to submit a second contract on a deal that's already about to be installed or something like that. So it works both ways, but we have really clear-cut rules of engagement, and if there are issues, we follow that and can, if that type of scenario comes up, we have actions we can take to keep the partner whole and make sure that those types of scenarios don't happen.
Excellent. Well, that actually looks like all the questions we've got from the audience at this time, Matt. So thank you again for your time.
Sure.
That was a great presentation, very informative.
Great. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. Please do take a few moments to fill out your post-event survey. We do take your input very seriously and try to implement that for future events. But this concludes today's webinar, and you may now disconnect.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.